hop on now. Are we not Irish? No? Okay, fun's over. Let's start the show. Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Intro Show, your home for all things Irish rugby from across the professional and amateur men's and women's game in Ireland. I am joined as usual by Adam and David who are here. Ben is on his way. He had tech issues right as we were about to hit record, but he will be here. And back by popular demand to the Global Game Night channel is Italian rugby fan and expert Mike Petretta. Mike, I'm going to bring you in first. Firstly, thank you very much for joining us this
Thank
week.
you for having me.
Can't be easy to accept the invitation on a week where you lose by 7 points in Dublin. But tell us about yourself and your channel firstly for Telly to Rugby and all that.
Yeah, of course. So we're an English-speaking Italian rugby podcast. We've been around for a couple of years. Focus predominantly on rugby. That's the only thing that we focus on. So no hospitality or anything like that in the background. And yeah, just try and get sort of some analysis, insights from players and coaches, and yeah, just trying to spread the gospel.
Yeah, I mean that's what we're all trying to do really, but some of us end up getting called troll accounts or different things or get given out to if we don't wear certain jerseys. But I'm in the fleece at the moment, so I
Uh,
think everyone should be nice to me this week. Adam,
I'm really worried the fact that I'm not in a jersey. I'm the jersey guy, and I do get pointed at.
can
Different
I ask you a question
circumstances.
actually, Adam, while it's in my head? It's not got to do with jerseys, but is there any chance you're going to end up leaving us halfway through the Six Nations to join Vittorio and Andrew Trimble on their excellent rugby podcast?
Do you know what? I saw Vittorio on Friday, and he was incredible. He had a wee trad band on when you walked in, and I was just like, and it was his biggest show in Liverpool as well. So it was his biggest ever show, and I was just like, he was incredible. So I did try and get a wee Interpro show, wee card, and he was like, I like your thoughts, and it's a very Ulster-based podcast, so you never know. The jig might be up.
Yeah, well, you never know. Like you have like Andrew Trimble, who's that bit older, Vittorio, and then yourself. Like you could have three generations there of Ulster
Yeah,
rugby fan.
I,
And just bring on like Willie John McBride then as the old guy or something.
I, I grew up worshiping Andrew Trimble. Like that's the thing. Like he was class.
So did Vittorio as well, I'd say. But
Yeah,
anyways,
that's yeah,
enough
yeah.
enough about other podcasts. They can be found on other platforms. So we are going to start things off tonight by talking about Ireland against Italy. We've a lot to discuss. Some heavy topics as well that we're going to start with in case people just want to jump ahead. You kind of know what that is. We're going to look ahead to the England game and do a little bit of chat on the Ireland under 20s win over Italy, one of the games of the year, actually. But we will start with Ireland's win in Dublin in the Aviva Stadium 20 points to 13. Am I right in saying? It was a 7 point game. I was there, believe it or not, and I still can't remember. Um, but unfortunately, David, it is the non-sporting side of things I think we have to start with. We can't avoid it anymore. Andy Farrell firstly questioning, are you not Irish if you don't support your tens? Which personally not a big fan of the phrasing, but get into that in a bit. And of course the racist abuse of Edwin Adogbo online that followed. But just kind of start with the out half stuff. Look, we condone any abuse and all personal
We
stuff. Like,
don't condone. Yeah,
yeah, sorry, sorry. That,
it's an
yeah.
important distinction to make.
Oh, Lee saved me with your editing skills. But look, it goes without saying, obviously. But at the same time, it is kind of the fact that it's unsurprising almost says a lot because I felt this week rugby's delusions of grandeur kind of kicked in as if this was like a thing that only happened here in Ireland. Like it was a brand new facade, but it's like it's not. This happens everywhere, and this is almost par for the course, even though it shouldn't be.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, which do you want to touch on first? The
We'll,
sound,
we'll we'll start with the 10
the ten
toxicity
stuff.
first.
Yeah. So the ten stuff is kind of a I don't know. It's a tricky one to balance. I've heard basically every podcast that has talked about the game talk about it, and every podcast that's been talking about rugby for the last 6 months has talked about it. It's kind of unavoidable. I do think we think of ourselves as having an obsession with 10. I can't remember which podcast I was listening to, but basically most countries do. Like it's a position that people obsess over because I think there's an outsized belief in how much of an impact the 10 has on the team. And they do have a huge impact, but it is still a 15-man team.
And just look at this
Um,
week, like Ireland play England. Owen Farrell stepped away because of he always felt he was never loved by English fans, and Marcus Smith
Yeah.
is probably the most
He's Old Trafford
Marmite
stepped
figure
away
in England.
for very similar reasons to
Yeah.
why, either Prendergast or Crowley could step away at some point if they felt like it. And I'm sure Andy Farrell, being his dad, feels that and is aware of that. I think the thing that's tricky to balance is that, and I feel a lot of people feel they need to caveat it by saying you're still allowed to criticize tens. They're different things. Like it shouldn't need to be said that there is a difference between criticizing a player's performance and their quality, and even questioning whether or not you think they should be selected. That's a perfectly reasonable position to hold. But I think it's when there's such a fine line, and I think it's very difficult for us as Leinster and Munster fans specifically to walk. I'm sure it'd be interesting to get the weigh in from a Connacht or an Ulster fan on how they see it, because I do think so much of it starts at that level and then just builds up and up and up from there. And it's, the rivalry is something we love, so it's something that you feed into. But then I do think it's become so high octane and so intense, and I think people not like us, because we talk about it, everybody talks about it, it just gets amped up to such a high level that the barrier for acceptability just gets pushed further and further and further. And then you meet people who are otherwise perfectly lovely and reasonable people, who just think there is no limit to what you can say or should say, or how you should react. We don't want to have a situation where people feel they can't criticize. To be honest, I don't think that's ever really that much of a concern. But yeah, I just think we do have to be a little bit careful. I don't think it's a mark of whether how Irish you are, but I do think there's a degree to which a player being not booed off the pitch, but I was in the stadium when Sam Prendergast came off. Yeah, it was a cheer for Jack Gurley, but there was a lot of people cheering because he was coming off the pitch, and that's not nice. It felt very, very pointed, and you could see on Sam's face that he knew it. And to be fair, he also knew he hadn't played well. He missed two fairly straightforward conversions, in open play. He wasn't his best. The defensive thing is something that's we used to beat Sam Prendergast with a lot, and it is something he needs to work on, and it's not acceptable for a player at his level. I think the thing that was most frustrating about that performance is that it didn't reflect all of the things he's usually quite good at. But that's the separate conversation of criticizing the player for his performance, which is fine. I do think we've kind of led into an area now where it's so heated that whichever player ends up in the jersey is going to get an outsized amount of criticism and an outsized amount of focus. And I think the pressure is showing that at the end of the day, these are young guys. These are really young guys, and to have a stadium of 50,000 people either on your back for good or bad reasons, is a lot. And I think it goes without saying Sam Prendergast felt pretty shit coming off that pitch. It probably goes without saying as well, if 52,000 people weren't shouting at him, Jack Crowley probably doesn't miss a kick to touch at the end either. So I think the pressure is showing, and while we shouldn't shy away from criticizing the Tens, I think some of the heat needs to come out of it, because at the end of the day, when they pull on a green jersey, these are Irish players, and we ultimately, while we might want our guy to play more often than the other guy, once they're on the pitch and they're in green, we should want them to win.
Yeah. Well, look, I completely agree. I think it's only normal that people will have their own biases. Like and obviously we've discussed this massively in terms of representation and things like that, be it in the media, be it in team sheets. I think it's super important for sport that we'll always have tribalism. That we'll always have these mini divides within fan bases. I think that's perfectly fine. There is a line. The line is very obvious. I think people say, "Oh, it's a fine," like it's a very obvious line as to what's personal and directed and what's different. And like I hear of like stories. Like I actually think one of the best for this is Luke Fitzgerald. I don't listen to him a lot. He'll always tell you if he bumps into a player and what ends up happening and the kind of the pushback. And what I think has happened with especially around the 10 debate is that everyone tried to bookmark that they were the first to get there, that they were the ones to call it. And I think that's one of the big things. It's probably my biggest gripe with age grade sport in general, be it minor football championships, under 20s rugby, is everyone wants to be the first to say, I saw this guy. I saw him first. I saw him first. And what you get then is Sam Prendergast was compared to Dan Carter. They're very different players, like massively different players. Like when Sam Prendergast is 23 now, Dan Carter was 23 and he played the Lions. But he was a very different player at 23 when he played the Lions that year. And I think it's all that kind of stuff. And people ultimately felt a little bit gaslit and a little bit felt treated like idiots from people who are writing about the game and talking about the game. And that's not just from, like I'm conscious that I have a media platform. People say I'm part of it. David, Adam, even Mike to a degree, because we spoke last year, you'd notice I didn't really do much stuff on tens last year because I was like, no, not touching it. Like, there's no point. You can't win. Obviously, you have to talk about the big talking points, but like people did feel like they were kind of being taken for fools, and like defense wasn't an issue, or this wasn't an issue, or what ended up happening was the flip side was Jack Crowley just wasn't playing well, we were told. But he did have a good Six Nations in the minutes he got. That was the thing. That was the flip side of it. And actually I might bring you in here before we move on to the Edwin Dogbo thing because you'd have seen it as well with coverage of Ireland and with how people were talking about Ireland. It just became bigger than the tournament. And that's why people called it a culture war here, because it just became too big and every opinion was just a little bit all over the place. And it just like it takes away from it all, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think one thing that I've noticed, and this isn't just sort of limited to Irish and Ireland and Irish rugby, is the fact that everyone can find, small parts of the game to reinforce and perpetuate an argument which doesn't really exist. So, and because of sort of how algorithmic things are, people are stuck in an echo chamber, and if you're on one side of, an opinion and the people that you follow have a similar opinion of you, it's just going to sort of exacerbate to something which is polarizing, and that's what it is. I think in this case, obviously both are fantastic players, and the boys take the piss out of me on my channel that I always say horses for courses, but it is very much an element of that. Each player should be on the pitch because they provide something unique to them, and that becomes their superpower. And a really good coach will then get the best out of them in that. So it's tough to subscribe to, this person should start full stop, because the game's moved on from that. It's a 23-man game, and you know depending on what's in front of you, you need to adapt, and also depending sometimes to the conditions, you need to adapt. And that for me is a really important part. When we're looking at these young players, right? First of all, I saw a comment from Genge that social media is poison, and it's poison to these young players. And I spoke a lot to Stephen Varney a few years ago, and something that he resonated with him. He was always attacked, for various different reasons, and
For
people sort of
personal reasons. We can
yeah,
call it what it because we're going to get on to Edward Jogbo. Like it was
yeah.
very personal reasons with Stephen Barney, and like even for myself, and this is probably the one thing that's annoying me this week. I spoke to Sean Klein in 2024 about his experience and all the kind of abuse and stick that he got because it stemmed from he was perceived to have taken Devin Toner's spot, and there was pundits saying he wasn't good enough, and it went on. It went on for years. Anytime anyone brought his name up, he just wasn't good enough, and he got abusive messages, things like that. The same that I assume Sam and Jack get as well, unfortunately. But it shouldn't get to that level. It shouldn't get to the point where players who are all more than good enough, like the vast majority, are getting personalized abuse because X person, like in Varney's case, it was YouTubers. In Sean Clayton's case, it was ex-Ireland captains. It should never get to that point, should it?
No, people disassociate players. I think I mentioned it last time, but people have a perception of rugby players to be some different to normal human beings, and in some respects they are, right, because of what they put on the pitch. But it's actually they're human, and they have very real issues at home, and they have very real issues when they're on the pitch. It's their job. So people sort of forget that if someone had a window into them doing their job, and someone constantly criticizing and calling for them to get sacked, that's a high pressure environment. And yes, it's a game where for a game that we look to win, and it's based on results. But as fans, and this is a generalized thing, as fans, I think it's really important that people support and build as opposed to find reasons to break down, because like you said, at the end of the day, that's what's going to have a fully unified team that can win tournaments. And in a transition, that's exactly what you need.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. And look, we have to talk about the other topic, which is Edwin Adogbo and the racist abuse that was online afterwards. And look, Adam, elephant in the room. None of us are qualified to talk about Edwin Adogbo's experiences growing up in Cork or in Ireland. as a son of immigrant parents who look. And Sinead O'Connor had the great line before: "You don't get to be Irish and be racist. We're the biggest migrants the world has ever seen. We are everywhere." And the likes of the Adogbos, like I think his older brother, someone says a chemical engineer, his two parents worked in the healthcare service. He's a rugby player, Sean's a rugby player. They've contributed more than enough. He doesn't need to explain his Irishness to anyone. But even just the fact that it was on this day, this great day for him, for Cove, for Cork. We don't see enough people from Cork in the Irish team as is. That Cork people will agree with me there. Never mind someone with a story like his. So the fact that this is what we're talking about, it's just so deflating, isn't it? And like we don't need to say, racism shouldn't happen. That goes without saying, but it's just very disappointing that it is a talking point.
Yeah, this was a man that had his like projection shown. Was it in Cove? Does Cove have a castle?
I've been told it's outside Cove, but I'm not going to argue with the people of Cork.
Well, this is a man that had his projection shown on the side of a castle saying, "Well done in your first cap." When does that ever happen in sport in general? Like Edwin Adogbo should be like he's going to be a talisman for our like team for the next like 15 odd years. There should be like the whole social media the abuse that he got was sickening. And Johnny Sexton said it as well. Like, it should not be a case that this overshadows his debut because he came on in his debut and he had an effort. He put in so much effort. And when it comes to the comments and when it comes to the abuse, and you hit it on the nail on the head there. We come from a place where we have migrated all around the world. Like there was like at one point in the 1980s, it was no blacks, no Irish, no dogs. Like that there just is no place for it at all anywhere. Like there just is not a place for it anywhere. And with Adogbo playing so well for Munster, and he's been on our radar for so long, and his brother's been on our radar for so long, he's contributing on a national level. He's representing all of us. Like he's not representing just himself. He's not representing just his family. He's representing all of us. And as you said about the struggles with Sean Klein, and the struggles with Stephen Varney, which I didn't really know about before, but when you think about the likes of all the players that have represented us and have proved themselves well, Edwin Adogbo, correct me if I'm wrong, has only started rugby when he was in 2015.
Yeah,
Yeah,
which
and
is
he's like
he was a tennis man. Like imagine defending his serve in tennis.
yeah, he's a man that should have been like he could have been playing in Wimbledon, but he was like, no. 2015, so he would have been he's the same age as me, so he'd have been about 13, and he decided to play rugby, and that was the start of this great career. He's gonna have an illustrious career. Like he's one of those ones that you'd really want to like. When I came onto the pitch, I was saying to my mate, we were watching it in the pub. I was like, he is going to run through walls, and he will. And he does not deserve this amount of abuse. It's the same, like it's like it's just disgusting to see. Like it is
Yeah.
really disgusting to see. And like Edwin, like he shouldn't be subjected to it. It should be a day to celebrate him. And I really, really love the fact that he sang Beyonce as well. Like he sang, I said that group chat in, like with through all the hate and stuff like that as well. Like he has there's this really good video online of him after his debut, and he's singing a song because it's his debut. But like, it's just the proudness of it. Like he's represented his country, he's represented us, he's
And just to
represented.
jump in there, there was a video the RFU put up of him in the anthems, and you could see how much it means. And I think one thing
Yeah,
that has always been said about Irish rugby is, and your province gets this a lot, of how much they really care. Now, obviously, with Ulster players, it's a little bit different. It's a generational bias. With some Leinster players, there's a bit of a generational bias or a class bias there. But for him, you could see how much just getting through our own Avine and how important that was for
yeah.
him. And like these are the things, and I don't want to jump across it because we do have to get into the rugby because we're about 20 minutes in at this stage. But I was unbelievably proud. I was sitting beside Izzy Todd, who was an Ulster fan, who was in the media section with me. and go follow her. She's great stuff up on her page on Twitter and on Instagram. But she kind of she was almost watching me watching him come on. Because for me, like I've been watching this guy for a long time, I would have had I wouldn't say dealings, but I've known people who would have known him in college, and everything everyone speaks about him, how Simon Zebo spoke about him last week. It was just a feel good story, and it's horrible that we talk about this with Sam, with Edwin, two guys who are only 23. Like they're kids, do you know? Like they're literally kids. But look, we'll focus on the rugby for now. Hopefully, it doesn't come up again. But it is what it is, and it probably will, especially with the 10 debate, because that will just not end. But Mike, I'm going to let you draw the first blood here in this one. Italy were good in this game, but I think the one thing, and myself and Hugh talked about this on the Six Nations Rewind, they were good for probably 80 meters of the pitch. It was that final 20 meters that has let them down again, unfortunately.
Yeah, so it's funny you say that. I rewatched the game beforehand, and in the first half, I counted 6 entries in the 22, 1 try, 3 balls lost sub 5 meters, and that conversion rate, if you want to be a top team, is just not good enough. Um, we always seem to lack that sort of last spark of quality against top opposition, and whether it's mental or not, I don't know. We do travel down the pitch quite well. But that said, I think it's one of those things where if it's a composure thing, maybe it's a panic thing when we get close to the try line. That either needs to come from experience and being in those positions and hopefully making the right decisions, because I do think a lot of it is decision led, which is forcing us to make mistakes. But I'm happier to see this over this game and the last game. We're starting to see those steps in the right direction. We're finding ourselves in a lot more opportunity to score points, whether it's taking the right decision and maybe kicking. I'm thinking particularly sort of the end of the first half with that scrum penalty. Little things like that I think make a big difference. If you're going to go for the corner, obviously make sure it's after it's a fully converted try. So little things like that are just really important, I think, at this level.
Yeah, and even if you're going to kick for touch, make sure it doesn't need a deflection off Robert Balogun's leg
Right.
to make it into touch, which unfortunately happened. But David, the flip side of this is Italy were very good. I watched the game back as well on Sunday evening, I think it was. Sunday morning actually. And I can't help but feel like this is kind of Ireland's level. And I'm not saying this was Ireland at their very best at their new level. I'm not going that far. But eventually you have to piece up all the pieces together. And over the last 18 months, I feel like this was a 6 out of 10 Irish performance at this level, or a 7 out of 10 Irish performance at this level. And that as much as Italy have kicked on, and they absolutely have, Ireland have regressed. And that's why we've seen this gap narrow year on year between the two teams.
Oh, without a doubt. It's I think the biggest mark of it was that like this was a one score game. It was the end was frustrating because it felt like we could have gotten a bonus point. But I think in hindsight, there was no way it really felt like we deserved a bonus point win. In that final run of play before James Lowe picked off that ball, I was just really hoping that we could win. And the fact that we were that close to the end and it didn't feel unearned, it didn't feel it's weird to say it didn't feel catastrophic, as in it wasn't like, oh my God, what's happened? It was like, yeah, no, this feels about right. This is a very good Italy team they've been building. And the thing I really like about this Italian team is that it's not a flash in the pan. It's not like, oh, this is just like the best that Italy have had in 10 years and the worst they Ireland have had in 10 years. And that's why it's this close. It's like, no, this is an Italian team who, shorn of some of their good play, Brex wasn't there, Capozzo wasn't there. This wasn't even Italy at full strength, and they still more than put it up to Ireland. And we just seem to have, yeah, we've regressed. We've taken a step back. There's a lot of it's we're still lacking, it feels, a really comprehensive identity. And it's um there's moments of good stuff in there, and there were good player moments out of this as well. Like if you want, I want to steer towards the positives. I thought Rob Balogun was phenomenal. Like he was
He's
he
he's on my notes to talk about.
yeah.
So yeah,
So
he
we
was
can we
excellent.
can we can touch on him a bit later, but like, he was good. Stuart McCluskey continues to be good. Cormac Chukwu was good. You know, there's a commonality there. Ulster have had a great season, been rewarded for it, and those players have managed to translate that into national form, which doesn't always happen as well. It is a different ball game. It is a different level. So that is definitely a positive. But no, it does feel like I don't know for both teams. It feels like it's a really the whole championship feels really in flux because I don't think any of us thought we were going to win to France. In a way, it went better and worse than it could have. They could have absolutely demolished us. The fact that they decided to take the foot off the gas and we were able to get those two tries back took the sting out of it a little bit. Um, Italy got a good win over Scotland. Scotland then come back and do what they did. So there's really no accounting for what Scotland's going to do at any given point in time. We
Well,
scraped a
well, well,
win.
well, you do. You know they'll beat England, and then everything else will be a mess.
I called it. Every podcast was like, "Oh, this is such a." I was like, "No, it wasn't a surprise. They do this every year. They've like I think 5 of the last 6 years they've beaten England. It doesn't matter how good England are. Scotland just it's the one match. I think they made a deal with somebody, and this is the one game a year they definitely get to win. And it's quite funny, especially because it's England they keep doing it to. But I think it'll be as the competition goes on. Like I'll be really interested to see how Italy go against France like in a genuine sense, because I think it'll be they'll put a challenge up to France more than certainly more than the Welsh were able to. It'll be a real trial for Italy. I you know I and then for Ireland to go up against England again. I think before this weekend we would have been a lot more sure of the result of that. Now I'm not so sure. So there's a lot in flux in this competition. I think the only thing anyone is really sure about is that France are very good. But other than that, it's kind of all over the place. And
I think you could say it's been a fair reflection so far, because usually
I do. I don't
this
think
is a break
anything.
week, so we
Yeah,
usually be discussing it in that terms. But I think so far everyone has been a fair reflection of themselves. I think the only caveat you could make is Italy deserved more than 1 point in Dublin. I think that's the only one you could really say for
they
for the
definitely didn't
sixth game.
deserve nothing. I was glad that from that point of view, whatever about us getting a bonus point, they definitely didn't deserve nothing out of that game. I think they might look back in frustration that they weren't able to get a bigger win over Scotland. I think my I was getting really obsessed during the week about the fact that there are 15 games in the Six Nations. So it's 5 weeks, 3 games each week, and all you have to do is divvy up those wins. They have to go somewhere. There's only a maximum of 15. So if we say five go to France because I think they're going to win a Grand Slam, that's only 10 left. So I think it's going to be. I'm in my head. I was working it out. I think it'll be. I'm saying it's going to be 5-3-3-2-2 zip. So I think ourselves and England will finish on three each. I think Italy and Scotland will finish on two each, and Wales will finish on nothing. And it'll come down to bonus points, then deciding where each of those are going. And I think Scotland and England, unfortunately, have the edge in those two competitions because they're racking up the tries. But yeah, no, it does feel fair. Like none of the victories felt unearned. And I think yeah, it's going to be continue to be interesting as the competition evolves to see if there are some genuine questions around where any of these teams finish because I think it definitely still feels like anyone could finish almost anywhere and that's a really interesting place to be after 2 weeks. It's only frustrating, and I know it's kind of inevitable. It's only frustrating that Wales aren't better. Because if
Yeah.
Wales were still the Wales of old, this would be a competition where you would genuinely have six teams who could all take a strip off each other. So if we can
I
get back to
suppose,
those days, it'd be
yeah,
really great.
yeah. One thing I always say is a good Premier League season needs one good team to be just like really bad. Like that could be the talking point there at that end, and then someone to kick on and take their place. And I think that's what we're seeing from Wales, unfortunately, is that you'll always have one team that's just in complete and utter flux. And obviously it's a lot worse. And again, there's much more qualified people to talk about this on the Global Gainline channel. But to kind of bring you back in there, Mike, because one thing that I noticed there in terms of our Italy chat is something Michele Lamaro said after the game, having been in the press conference, was they the young players that he's playing with now, and he's not old, he's only 26, I think. He's not an old guy. But when he was coming through at 19, 20, they didn't know how to win. Now they're looking at a game like this where it's like we knew how we could have won this game in Dublin. It's a very different mindset shift, and as much as Gonzalo Casada deserves a lot of credit, it now means you go into a game like the one in Lille this weekend, and you're saying, you know what, they could put it up some. Now, don't get me wrong, I did say on the Six Nations Rewind that I think physically they're just going to burn out a little bit this week. Be their third tough game in a row to be a big ask. But saying that, they know how to do it. They're as good. They're not going to fear Ireland next year. They're not going to fear Scotland, Wales. They don't really fear France anyways. So that's really important that young players just learn how to win in a jersey, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And I think actually one thing which is quite like a pertinent point is he he's a product of, brave coaching in the past. Like you said, um, Casada's going to get all the plaudits, but actually O'Shea, Franco Smith, they took chances. And if you look further back, it's a thankless task, like Jacques Brunel as well with France and so on and so forth. You can see that it culminates in these players getting experience from a younger age. And like you said, the first questions that he was getting for the first 2 years of his captaincy is, should Italy be involved in the Six Nations? And if that's what's being sort of presented in the media, and people back home are watching it, and the kids in the pathway are watching it, it's created sort of quite tough youngsters at age grade. I'm thinking, Jack Ferrari's speech against England. I'm thinking about Odiase's speech after England and talking about being forced to eat shit by all of the other nations, and it's created these resilient players which are now starting to seep through in the national team who have beaten their counterparts at age grade as well. And like you said, now we're in a position where we are learning how to develop into a nation that can compete with the best. And it's been a slow transition, but it's something that we're going to be continuously working towards. So yeah, I'm super proud of the boys. I'm super proud of where the team has come in the last sort of 2 or 3 years, particularly because there was a point where I genuinely thought Italy probably weren't going to be in the Six Nations, and that's a tough place to be. So yeah, I'm super proud where we are.
Yeah, well, that's good. And one man that's going to be very proud as well is a certain Ulster man on this call, because between Stuart McCluskey's quarterback class and Robert Balakoon's incredible finish, like, can we talk about this? Like, I know it's only from 20 yards. He'd no right to score that. Only Robert Balakoon scores that try. But David, no, Adam, we're going to have to give you the floor on this one. Bobcat and Stu were excellent. I spoke to Stu after the game and asked him how often does he do this. And if we've any young people listening, first of all, don't. We are too loose. But if we've any young people listening, he just said, I just go around with the ball in one hand the whole time. That's literally just that's all I do. He doesn't practice it. He just always goes around with the ball in one hand. And it showed and it paid off. And Robert Balakoon worked his socks off, deserving player of the match. A very proud day for Ulster fans, and to bring Izzy back in there, as I mentioned, very she was very proud that he got man of the match and they played well. So it was a great day for the Ulster lads.
It was really, really nice. Like I've like being an Ulster fan in almost like Irish exile for the past couple of years, and now only like now picking the Ulster players. I'm like, guys, this is what you've been missing. This is the extra zip that you've been missing. This is like lads are having fun. Stuart McCuskey's gonna be like Tom Brady throwing quarterback style passes.
As
Um,
long as they stop mentioning Aaron Rodgers. Anyone who doesn't realize why
yeah.
that's a bad idea, you
Yeah.
don't need to. Just
Oh, yeah,
no.
it's mad. Like I can put in any other quarterback off the top of my head and it would be grand, bar him. Anyway,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's one of those that like Robert Balogun had to beat three players to score that try as well from 20 yards, by the way. Like he was I felt like he played really, really well. And it just shows the talent of wingers in this country. And I'm bringing this out to the wingers in this country because, I could be an Ulster bias fan, but like Tommy O'Brien is also a very good player. JJ Kenny's a good player. Zach Ward's a good player. There's loads of
Adam, the
players.
whole point of having guests from each province is that you're allowed to be biased. You're not
Oh,
you're not sitting on the Virgin Media panel here.
fuck it. Okay. So, yeah, but Balogun was absolutely unbelievable. And do you know what? Give him his flowers because he has struggled with injuries in the couple of seasons beforehand. One of my mates was like, "Oh, is he really up to it?" And I was like, "No, always been up for it. It's just that the injuries have proven this sort of stress, this sort of like, he deserves way more caps than he does, but that's only due to his
But
per injury
n
record.
not only we should say, because the first time we ever spoke on a Zoom call was the night Dan McFarlane was let go, and you would have been of the same opinion of I that Ulster's attack under Dan McFarlane did not get the best out of Robert Balogun. It didn't help his
Oh,
international career.
do you know what? That was a weird night, but that
That
was
was a weird night.
it was one of those. I think that was my second ever podcast with you, possibly, but it was one of those that like Mark Sexton's unlocked this attacking ability in the Ireland, in the Ulster in the Ireland team. I don't want to speak on that. He's not going to be in Ireland anytime soon. Hopefully, keep it Ulster, stay in Ulster, Mark, keep it to Johnny. Anyway, but yeah, I think that he's really unlocked this ability to like players really look like they're enjoying playing their rugby. Like they really do. Izuchukwu as well was unbelievable in all parts of the pitch. I feel like he did little to nothing. Like he stole a lot of lineouts as well, which was like perfect in our like the basically how one of the reasons why we won the game was disrupting that level of set piece. The scrum didn't go so well, but there's other aspects that we did win it in. And Stuart McCluskey at the minute, to be fair, we can ask anyone on this call, has probably been our best player of the Six Nations so far. Like he has been trucking up the meters. He's been the one that's fighting and fighting and fighting to get through. He's really taken this chance with two hands as well. Nick Timoney as well, when he came off the pitch, didn't do much wrong. I thought he played really well as well. Like a solid player to come off the bench as well. I just think as an Ulster fan right now, it's sort of that weird Twilight Zone feeling. Compared to this time last year where I was just like, oh, I get why we're not starting a lot of players. So now where I'm like, I want more. In the 10 debate, why is Jack not being mentioned? I want Jack being mentioned. We want Murphy.
No,
You
no,
know,
you don't. You don't. That's kind of the point is we don't
yeah,
need
no,
people
yeah,
dragged into this
I know, yeah,
debate.
I know, but the little Ulster rugby hipster in me, I was calling for Aidan Morgan this time last year to be in an Ireland shirt. We all seen how that went. So
I mean, he's
hopefully,
he
it
started the
is.
season well, in
He started the
fairness.
season well. He did, but yeah, it was one of those like as an Ulster fan watching this Ireland team, it's like when I grew up watching Ireland, we always had like a Tommy Bowe, Andrew Trimble, Rory Best, Stephen Ferris as well. I'm thinking Chris Henry in 2015. There's lots of these players. Yeah, that
Great
Streets won't
shout.
forget. Streets won't forget.
Streets forget that Chris Henry had that turnover on the French player in 2014
Yeah.
that ended the game.
Oh, it's the 2015 Andrew Trimble and Chris Henry combination for Ireland. It was incredible. Like that France game, like Streets won't forget it. They
We're
won't forget the Trimble
100%
try.
losing you to Vittorio and Trimble's podcast. It's been confirmed.
Imagine.
I might just try and move off this, Adam, because we have another game to get into, another two games to get into, actually. But I suppose just like to kind of round it off, I do believe Ireland got out of jail a bit in this one. Do you know, I don't think any of us could disagree with that. It did feel like they got out of jail a little bit, but if they can take the positives from this week, and that's the thing, because it feels like with the selection Ireland have gone to, that it's just, oh, we weren't great. Get the band back together again. And I do look at someone like Cormac Izuchukwu, Keane Prendergast the week prior. I think Jeremy Luckman has done well at what he's been asked to do, which is to scrummage. Robert Balogun, Jamie Osborne. Like, we don't need to get the band back together every week. And we got into a little bit later on with the Ireland England game. It just feels like we may end up taking the wrong learnings from this game. And the learnings are that like Edwin Adogbo, Nick Timoney, Balogun, guys like these, give them the chance and they will play well. And not everyone played well. Not saying they did, but give them the chance and they will. And that's the unfortunate part. But we'll have two games to touch to in just a minute because before we move on, just to like to remind everyone to make sure to subscribe to the Global Game channel to get all the latest content, including the Six Nations Rewind, which Adam and Mike will be frequenting before it becomes URC Rewind again. And you can find us on all good podcast platforms and social media platforms as well, except the Leinster Rugby Reddit. I'm not trying to call anyone out.
Boo. Sorry.
But I was told to mention this because Lee has been banned, apparently, from the Leinster Rugby Reddit because I'm a troll. Me. Apparently, I'm the troll. But I have the last laugh because I'm actually in the Leinster Rugby Reddit, unbeknownst to them. So come at me. What are you going to do, guys? But we're just going to move on really quickly to the 20s game because an absolute humdinger in Cork. I'm not sure if you actually seen this one, Mike. It would really help if you did, because the other two lads didn't.
No, no, I did. I did.
We're good. We're good. Ireland getting over the line. Josh Neal, player of the match. Brilliant performance from him. Andrew Brown, not as happy as Josh Neal was after the game, but Ireland grounded out. Some unbelievable tries. Christopher Barrett and Derry Maloney, both with superb scores. Neal with more of a close range effort. Mike, I suppose I'll let you kind of take the lead on this game as a whole. What was your thoughts on Ireland and on this Italian team and where they're at?
Uh, so Ireland were you like brilliant in transition. As soon as the ball went, they were all like flooding the support channels on line breaks. Everything that you would love to see at age grade, because those are, I suppose, skills that if you don't have them at international level, it's hard to learn. Um, yeah, it was just a wonderful game. Like, already having that ability to sort of identify the space and identify the support lines just early on, beautiful. I also thought actually the way that you guys distributed was really smart. There was some players on the pitch for Italy which I thought were quite lazy, and for you guys to identify, like I'm thinking particularly the tight head and the hooker. Most of the line breaks, if you go and look back, it was them retreating offside and not wanting to touch the players. And again, just like really smart play from Ireland, going ahead and sort of making us pay for being lazy. From an Italian perspective, listen, like there are some gems in that team. I'm really looking forward to seeing sort of how Casarin develops. I'm really looking forward to seeing how Malik Faisal develops, who has been brilliant at Zebre with the opportunities that he's been given. Obviously, Apoko Giamfi looks like a real, frankly, looks like an actual real sort of test player now. Now that he's shifted, I think he's lost like 25 kilos, which is insane to think. So I think he's still like 127 or something stupid, but he's he's a lot lighter than he was. So there's some real gems in there. So I'm really I'm really excited to see sort of what they can do. Obviously, they started so poorly against Scotland, but we've got some we've got a bright future there, I think.
Yeah, and I think that was kind of part of the frustration for me. Like, obviously, I didn't want Italy to win, but like, I was watching them and I was like, oh, they're just making some of the same mistakes they made last week. And
Yeah.
it felt like they actually would play 80 minutes of good rugby, but it was just the type of mistakes you just don't normally see. Like one of the Scottish tries the week before was literally a ball that wasn't caught, but it just bounces so awkwardly. Like, it was one of those weird ones. It felt like they had a few of those in this game, especially at the start. But as you
Yeah.
said, Ireland it was almost the inverse of the senior game. Ireland were only good at transition and from distance when they could use the pace of Maloney. Thought Rob Kearney, for a lad who was not really on people's radar to play under 20s this year, was absolutely excellent.
His boot was beautiful, by the way. Like,
Yeah,
he's just a fantastic player.
yeah, and like, to be fair, like, obviously Ben's not here, but there was a Munster 9, 12, 9, 10, 12, 13 in there, and all Leinster born back three. Not a huge amount of Ulster players in this particular squad, but there's a good variety to this team, which is always good to see as well. But gents, I suppose we have to talk about this weekend. Now, unfortunately, after everything we talked about with the 10 debate, while Adam was talking a few minutes ago, I got the notification of predicted team, and the first name that's on is Prendergast. So, like, this is not going to end anytime soon. I did hear someone say it's not going to end because Andy Farrell said so in terms of the actual trolls out there, but it's just not going to end as long as editors are relying on clicks to make money either, I suppose. But Adam, I'll start with yourself because I'll read out the predicted Ireland 23 actually, first of all. So it's Jeremy Luckman Dashi and Tyke Furlong in at tight head, Joe McCarthy, James Ryan, Tyke Byrne in at six, Josh Van der Fleer in at seven, and Doris moves to eight. Gibson Park and Crowley restored at halfback, Lowe, McCluskey, Ringrose, Balakoon, Osborne remain unchanged. And then Kelleher, O'Toole, Tom Clark's, or sorry, Finlay Bealham seems to be the calls there. Two of Izuchuku, Timony, Conan, Adogbo, and then Casey and Kieran Frawley restored for the first time in a year and a half. It's Look, we don't want to say it's not a good team, but as I kind of alluded to earlier on, it feels like let's get the band back together. Tyke Burns back in, hasn't been playing that well. Josh Van der Fleer's back in, hasn't been playing that well. Tyke Furlong hasn't had a lot of minutes. Tom O'Toole fundamentally is not a loose head. Like he's not. Like he has not played enough loose head. He's less than 2 games in his career. Finley Bealham hasn't been playing all that well. And you just get a little bit frustrated for Tom Clarkson, Michael Mill, Keane Prendergast, Cormac Isachukwu. And I think that's going to be the sentiment for the next 36 hours or whatever it is.
Yeah, I think it's quite a lackluster team to like have. There's like a couple of players like as you mentioned, Tag Burn and Van der Fleer haven't had a necessarily great season so far. You know, those are players that we normally would rely on. But we didn't last week, and yes, it was a scrappy game, but in the end we won. You know, Van der Fleer was dropped altogether, whether that was a rotation thing or if that was a tactical thing, you know, maybe like put fire up the bum for him. Like, I just don't think, like, I don't think I said that right, by the way, but I don't think that, I don't think that necessarily like looking at that team and looking at the England team that they've already announced because they love announcing a team early, uh, I I I see the excitement more happen in the likes of the bench because when you look at the bench, and like we could either have what Izzy Adogbo,
Bone and
Timmy,
Timony. Two of the three
and
of those four, I think, actually. Sorry.
three of the four. Like that's where the excitement comes in the forwards. Like that forward pack in general, age profile wise, that back three, like that back row is quite an older, more like you would expect Tag Burn to be in the second row, you know, less likely to get that jackal in, things like that. But James Ryan hasn't really, to me, had a good enough tournament to warrant him even starting this game. Um, I think he was,
Would you have gone Burn at five? Is Duke with six,
yeah,
maybe?
yeah, I would have, and that's not like the Ulster bias coming in me, but like I did think that James Ryan has had a lackluster slash he's getting into fights where he doesn't need to get into fights. It was in Italy as well. Like there was a couple of moments in the Italy game where James Ryan just tried to scrap a random Italian player. And I know that these things happen and it's mind games, but this is a player that should be over that. Like he's played so many games. He's a very good player. I feel like I have to say that now when I like sort of like I like he's a very good player. Like I feel like it's not an Ulster bias showing, but this is like more of a Ireland tactically should be thinking, how can we change this? How can we counteract somebody like a Henry Pollock being able to play in every position because apparently he trains at wing? Cormac Isachukwu, Cormac Isachukwu was a sevens player. You know, he is a great player for that mobility, but that back row doesn't seem mobile. We saw glimpses of it in from Doris in the Italy game. We haven't seen it from Tag Brown this season. We haven't seen it from Van der Fleer. We need a way more mobile back row, and that's where my real concerns lie in that pack.
Because it's funny you say that, because last year for this game, when I was previewing it, I remember looking at that. England went with a very understrength pack, and they said, we're going to kick the ball, we're going to move you around, and we're going to try and squeeze the life to you at the end. Kind of doing something similar, but obviously Coles, Pepper, Underhill isn't a huge pack to bring off. I think they had like Willis and someone else on the bench last time
Yeah.
out. But Ireland, it's like, as you said, mobility. Will Greenwood made the same point this evening on off the ball. He's like, mobility is probably the one thing you'd say about Ireland. And I suppose, Mike, is your kind of neutral eye on things, or resident Munster man, whichever one you prefer to take on this evening, because we've no Ben after all. But what when you look at those sides, what way would you be kind of leaning? Because my like the perception here that we've heard is, oh, England are only just being too arrogant ahead of the Six Nations, and they've been knocked down a peg. But it's kind of like, geez, I wouldn't write them off just yet. I think they deserve a second chance, especially if Ireland are handing out second chances.
Yeah, I think England are going to try and really sort of put the set piece under pressure. I obviously there was Italy had a good result against Scotland and Ireland, and I think they're probably just going to try and target that. Obviously, see if the game breaks up. Obviously, with Smith and Jack Van Portfleet, those guys thrive in sort of broken play. So I think what they're probably going to try and do is really sort of out muscle and try and win the game in the last 20 minutes. That said, if you guys manage to get that shape on shape and try and have those sustained like phases like you had with the Balakan tribe, which was stunning. That looked like the island of old. If you managed to maintain that and move around the big, slow, I'm taking Genge out of this, by the way, but the big, slow English forwards and sort of play to your advantages, you guys have a real chance here. Especially because they're wounded and frankly, they probably don't think they're as invincible as they thought they were at the start of the season. Start of the Six Nations. So yeah, man, this is a game where I think England probably do go in as favourites, whether they're heavy favourites or not. I don't necessarily know, but this is a real good chance for you guys to show that you're taking strides forward as well. So um, yeah, I wouldn't put any money on this game.
Yeah, I'd been a similar boat. I do remember having it said to me the morning of the game last week that the handicap was about 17 points, and I was like, oh, take Italy on that, like 100%. I don't know what it is this week, but it's very much teeing up like it could be a one-score game, as they so often are in Twickenham. But Ireland's record there isn't hectic. And David, to kind of start to put a bow on this episode and on this preview, I suppose, firstly, what do Ireland need to win this game? Secondly, can they win this game? And thirdly, will they win this game? And maybe I'm being foolish, but I'm starting to get just a little. I think I've listened to too much Irish podcasts this week. I need to listen to Ugo Manya and the boys or something to calm me down as well. But
No, I think it's a very open engagement. England are Um, you know well, Kellen, I've only been watching rugby for a scant 8 years at this stage. But England are a team who always scared, like from the beginning, they're the team that have scared me the most. Even when France have objectively been the better team, there's something about playing England.
it's
They're
called
just
generational trauma, David.
that's probably what it is. But they're genuinely there's something about them. And they can be such a vibes team when they get up, they can get really up and they can cause a lot of trouble. For some reason, like we joke about the Scotland team thing, it almost seems to go in reverse where they don't get up for Scotland and that's why they get taken by surprise, which is really weird. It's like that's the game they write off even though they really shouldn't. Um, but they always get up for this game, and so it's not gonna be easy. I do think it'll be if Ireland win, I do think it'll be by a score. I think England have it in them to win by more, but I think if Ireland win, it'll be by a score. They have Henry Pollock in the back row. I think this is one of his first starts. I don't think he's had a lot of starts for England. If any,
For a
Tommy
start.
Freeman, I think, has been restored back to the wing. Henry Arundel, having escaped punishment, is back on the wing as well. I'm happier to see one of those guys out there than the other. Arundel, if he has a similar performance, you wouldn't be super concerned. But Tommy Freeman, I always felt he was slightly wasted at 13. That guy can do such damage from the wing if he's given space and time.
While you're on the topic,
Um,
David, and I'm not trying to, reopen old wounds, but is there a fear factor here? The fact that some of England's most important players in this game, Freeman, Mitchell, Pollock in particular, they will not fear Ireland. Not right now, not after what they did in the Aviva Stadium last year. All three of them were incredible in that game. Even move aside the Lions stuff and all that, Dingwall as well. They know how to beat Leinster. They'll feel like they know how to beat Ireland. And like the greatest respect in the world, you don't want to give Henry Pollock ammunition.
As soon as I saw that team sheet, that's the first thought that entered my head. A shiver genuinely went up my spine. I saw Pollock at 8, I saw Freeman on the wing, and I went, ah, fuck, not again. Like genuinely, it was that loss was one of the most gut-wrenching ones. Not because we've lost before. I've watched Leinster lose a lot of games that at that end of the season. I've watched us lose finals, and the finals do hurt worse. But there was just something about that game. It was the ease with which Freeman is so fast. Like he was able to find space and do damage. And then Pollock is just, he is a phenomenal player. He's a gobshite, but he's a phenomenal player. And as he continues to grow and get better, he'll back up. You can talk a lot of talk, but you gotta be able to back it up. I fear he's going to be the kind of player who more often than not is able to back it up. So he is still quite young. So, an older team with a bit more experience under their belt could possibly take advantage of that. But no, it's gonna be a hell of a fight. I'll be interested to see how England come back because I think we were teeing it up from the first weekend that final the final weekend was gonna be a Grand Slam decider, and now it's not. So, England are in the unfortunate position where not only can they not win a Grand Slam, they also can't win a Triple Crown. The only thing up for them at this point is the championship. And yeah, that's got to be a frustrating place to be. I don't think humbled is the right word, but it's definitely got to stick in the craw because I think they didn't think that's where that's where it would end. When it comes to the team. I had thoughts on it. I've seen the same team come out from a number of outlets now. I will say a couple of things. Just one is that I think the Kieran Frawley thing I'm interested by. I have a suspicion that it's because people think it's going 6-2 and people don't think that Sam Prendergast or Harry Byrne will be picked at 23 if it's 6-2. I'm of the opinion that if you pick Jack Crowley to start, that's effectively the same as having him at 23. So you could do that if you wanted to. It doesn't lock you into picking Kieran Frawley. If you start Jack Crowley and you go 6-2. My first thought when I saw that team sheet was I think there's a lot of educated guesswork going on here because I think this is a fundamentally conservative selection, which I think is what people do when they're not 100% sure what's going on. And I have run this by somebody who I'll tell you about after the podcast, who confirmed that in other weeks, the people making these predictions do get quite a steer from Ireland camp, and they didn't get that steer this week. They are operating on a lot of educated guesswork. So I'll be interested to actually see what team comes out at 11 o'clock this morning. I think it could look a little bit different from that team, even if just because the bench where they say two of Dogbo, Izuku, Timony, with Conan being a definite. Um, Unless Izuchu is going to be your replacement lock, I suppose Ty Burn technically from six is your replacement lock. I don't know if they're going 6-2 and not have a lock on the bench. I think that'd be an odd way to structure a team. So if I was putting money on anything, I also like Mike would not put money on this game, but I would put money on the Ireland team sheet being a little bit different to the predicted one.
Okay, interesting. We'll get predictions before we wrap things up. Adam, I'm going to start with you. You are technically you're not on location because the part of England you live in claim they're not English. But firstly, to you, who's going to win this one?
Yes, Scouse not English, my friend. Fair enough. I'm on the world. Close enough. Anyway, yeah, I think that we're looking at a limping England. I want us to win. Whether or not that I would survive going to the pub, this is my annual. I'll go to the pub and wear my Ireland jersey and sit in the front, just going, well, aren't we class? But this time I'm a bit worried about it. So, I'd say us by a score. I think I might as well put my heart where my head is, and say Ireland by a try.
Okay, David.
I think it'll be England by a score.
I'm leaning towards England, but all the analysis I do beforehand tells me that they're not to be feared if Ireland can get parity in the front five. Now, in saying that, their front five includes Ellis Genge, phenomenal player, Joe Hayes, great scrummager, and one of the most underrated second row pairings in world rugby in Chessum and Itoje in terms of how they complement each other. Ireland, if they're going to start the likes of Byrne, Van der Fleer, James Ryan, Furlong, and back the likes of, you know, Beelum on the bench, for instance, Frawley on the bench, they need to perform. They need to perform. Like, I don't want to be going into this Wales game with this sort of a team, for instance. Like, fundamentally, they have to perform. If Ireland are 1-2 after 3 weeks, questions will have to be asked. Like, they will, and they will have to be asked. I'm thinking England, but I'm talking myself around to an Ireland one. So this may change by the time 2:15 comes around on Sunday. Saying England, heart obviously says Ireland. Mike, not really a decider because I sat on the fence,
Yeah,
but
no,
the
it's
final
it's
one.
it, it's tough, isn't it? I'm looking at that England team, and there's things in my head. I'm like, oh, Stewart's taking it, forward so much, and if you guys manage to really sort of slow down the breakdown and get a quick sort of turnover and attack in transition, he's slow getting back, and like I'm sort of playing it out in my head over and over. I would say just on face value, like you said, that set piece bit is massive. If you give England front foot ball, you're not able to slow down the breakdown, and you're not winning the set piece, then it, I don't think it's going to be a long day because you guys are defensively good enough, but I think England probably go in as favourites. Like I said, I'd probably say England by score.
I think the race to 10 is going to be important. Who can get that little bit of a buffer out? Because I'm not sure England are great at chasing the game. And honestly, I think Ireland, by starting Jack Crowley, have weakened their chance of chasing a game. To be honest, as we seen against like Australia and last week, he is better at chasing a game from the bench with his style of play. But gentlemen, we'll leave it at that for tonight. We'll be back next week to discuss either Ireland's tournament chances being alive and talking ourselves into winning it on points difference, or it'll be well and truly dead and we'll all be a little bit sad. So one or the other. It's going to be one or the other. Gentlemen, thank you very, very much for joining me. My thanks to Adam and David as always, but also to Mike, who you can find on the Fratelli de Rugby podcast, along with the brilliant co-hosts and guests that he does have on there each and every week. We'll be back next week. For now, until next time, take it easy.